Tim?
I've been not so. I mean, I've been good. I just, um, I feel like I've been really confronted with like my lack of like I can't know what's going on if I'm not in prayer.
Yeah.
Like me and Anthony were sitting down the other day, and I was just like, "Yo, I don't read my Bible," you know. And he was like, "You know what? I haven't been reading it either." And I was just like, "All right, well then we're gonna do that, you know, because we're watching the game or whatever." And I'm just like finally, I'm like, I need God, you know. And then I went out I read for three like I read 3 chapters, and then in Psalms, and I forget what I read, but I know it like it was like speaking to me,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, that's cool. And then I went out on my walk because I like to go out to pray. It makes me feel like I'm doing something, like I'm going to meet with God.
Yeah.
And he like I was just kind of just like I need this. Like God, I've been doing this. I'm not like good, and I really need you. Kind of just asking for everything, just like putting it all on him. And then over some time, he he like gave me some like I kind of what I've been missing, that whole piece that I've been missing from being like absent, he gave me. And that was like really exciting. But now I did also have a fear too that like, am I just gonna go right back to not like following him, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and seeking him in my
Right.
life? Because I'm like, this is it right here. I feel like when I'm in that place, I have found like like this is
Like if you could stay
sacred.
there,
Yes, I would stay.
you'd be the superhuman, super holy
Yes,
version of Tim Charles
yeah,
that you're supposed to be.
and it would be sick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is sacred. This is real. This is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. You go back into the house, and it's already you're back to like, and well you it's I got that piece of like, all right, God, you are here with me, and like I can do what I want.
Yeah.
But this whole concept of knowing like this ultimate grace, and that you are sealed to the day of redemption, it's something I can know up here, but I find myself not really believing that like
Well,
I
even
don't know.
that situation that you just described. So, one way of looking at that situation is like, okay, so here's the formula, right? I read 3 chapters a day. I go on one prayer walk a day,
And then I'm
and I
good.
will be who I'm supposed to be, right?
That's what I'm thinking right now.
And
Yeah.
God forbid that there's ever a day where I'm not able to do that. All hell will break loose, right? But but in reality, like there's this phrase that they have in AA, where they say every time you get all the keys, God changes all the locks, and it's funny. It's a little bit of a it's something to sit on and think about for the next 10 years, but it's true because it's not about the keys, right? It's about the relationship with God. Like the Bible says, if righteousness could come by the law, then Christ died in vain, right? And so this whole thing about grace that we've been talking about, there's this book called "Practicing the Presence of God" by this monk guy called Brother Lawrence. It's like a super old book, and one of the key takeaways that I got from it, this guy was known for his prayer life, and so the long and short of it's that he went to a monastery because he wanted to get closer to God. He wanted to be in prayer. He just wanted to live this spiritual life, right? and he found that monastery life was actually like a lot of long hours of just like menial labor. Like he was working in the kitchen for like 12, 13, 14 hours a day, like cleaning dishes and all this stuff for all the other monks. But he said that
Yeah.
he found himself in those times praying to God, right? And so you might be quick to be like, oh, right. So, okay, right. We're just supposed to be praying all day. And it's like, yes and no, right? Because the whole point of the book is how do you get to a life where you're praying all the time, right? And he said it's not through sheer force of will or determination. What was the key for him, and I think the key for all of us, is that he just realized that whenever he got to a point where he realized he wasn't praying, he would just very easily, very quickly, no guilt, no shame, no condemnation, he would just come back to God and be like, oh, sorry, God. And he would just start talking to God again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the key is I think sometimes we have these ideas and they might even be from God, right? Like God might be showing you, hey, I want you to be reading 3 chapters a day and going on a prayer walk once a day. But we can get these times in our lives where, just through a series of circumstances, oops, hasn't happened in 3 weeks. And then we get all the other thoughts that come after that, where it's like, oh, like, the weight of that 3 weeks, it means that I can't even pick it up today,
Yeah.
you know? Or, I'm just not living the life I'm supposed to. And then you get all these like thoughts of like, oh, maybe I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And maybe I've missed the boat and
Yeah.
that's why my life's failing in this area. And none of that's true. Like what we're supposed to do when we find ourselves in that situation is just go back to God. Boom. And like that's what's actually going to make us the Christians that we want to be. And I know it's kind of a subtle difference. Like there might be people listening and they're just like, yeah, well, I don't see how you said anything different than what you said in the beginning, where you have to build this habit of doing this thing. But it's like why, or like what happens if you don't? And that's where the grace kicks in, right? Because it's like if we can get to a place where we know the punishment's been taken on the cross and we have a freedom to serve God, then we actually will. Because you're always going to have the time where you're not, right? And it's like, what do you do with that? How quickly
Yeah.
do you come back? And
Yeah, I think it's hard when you notice, okay, I have been taking advantage of this grace,
yeah, yeah,
But even in that, we kind of have to learn how to mature and understand like I'm still learning to especially for me because it's I don't know, what I also learned from that experience was the sovereignty of God. I'm like, all right, I need to learn that salvation wasn't my own works, and also like my godly life, I don't get the credit for either.
yeah,
Like I have to give the credit to God for him humbling me to that point and bringing me to that place and using all of that absent time part of his plan, because I'm like I know that God uses all things for the good of those who love him,
yeah,
but do I really like trust him that he was still working in my life in that time that I'm ashamed of, or
right,
that didn't look too good to me? So but then it's hard, you have to like, where's the line though, because it's like if he can work through the dysfunction, I guess also knowing that we have his spirit and that we do have a nature of righteousness,
mm-hmm.
that's where it comes into play. Because now, for some reason, well, not for some reason, like since I have that spirit, I do desire righteousness. Like that lifestyle of not being connected to the vine is not for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I will yearn, and the spirit will groan on my behalf.
Yeah,
And it's almost like that's a scary thing to trust God with. That like he is he is going to bring me to the places I need to be, you know? Like, yeah. It's hard to fit in my life, like, do I have to, like, how much of it is me? I don't know. But it is cool just in hindsight, you're like, wow, God, like, yeah, there's struggles in the safe place, like in Jeremiah, I think it was 11 or 12 that we were reading.
Yeah.
Like how we can stumble in this new life that I've set up for myself. I go to church. I've cut off like all of the bad things that I was moving towards. And now I've set up for myself a life where I'm sure to honor God.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't matter, you know, if I'm not truly going to the source and actually worshiping the source, because it can just become about church.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I think the whole experience that I have had, I can like gain more faith and trust from it.
Mhm.
But I just have this bug that's like, all right, now it's time to take that what God has given you and make sure that you flip the coin, like flip your life around
Yeah.
and you do it, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard like with this grace idea to understand, like, I don't know. Like to really to trust God with your sanctification is so
Yeah.
hard.
But even like what are we supposed to be doing?
That's the thing,
You
dude.
know, well,
Like nothing matters.
but well, not the, but like, because I think it's very easily to get, um, it's like a whole can of worms, but like works focused, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, I did a good deed. That's what I mean by works focused, right? And so
Like I
I'm
prayed.
not, well, I'm not bashing works, right? Like I'm not saying like works versus grace, right, or something. Because what you're saying, what I feel like what you were saying before is like, oh, like, was God really working all things for good when I was like wandering a bit back there,
Yeah. I
for a
believe he
while?
was.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but like I think what's perhaps kind of intertwined and sort of wound into our brains a little bit in this is that we're thinking like God's work is good deeds, right? So like clearly
Yeah.
when I was not doing good deeds for the last 2 weeks, how could God have been working through that? And you can kind of be like, well, maybe like he's going to use me later in life to help people who have two
Yeah.
week spans.
Maybe the good deeds will come
But
later.
but like I think yes, that's a part of it, but it's like I think like what I see in the New Testament especially is like our works, if you will, are to love each other, right? And so, you like we can't get stuck in this economy, this ecosystem of like good works versus bad works, and like, oh, I've been doing bad things, and oh, like I've been missing opportunities to do good things and stuff like that. It's like our whole, as now that we're saved, right? Like the Christian life in the new covenant, it's all about loving each other, right? And so we're not we weren't missing, like if you think like, let's say you have a conviction from God that you notice most other Christians for some reason in our generation don't have, right? Let's say, maybe you've just been exposed to something in a certain way. God has chosen to open your eyes to some something, like TikTok is the devil's, playground or something. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. And
And
you
you
gotta stop that.
and you've seen it, and like everybody else is just kind of like ha ha ha, and like, so what are you supposed to, is it now your job to go and evangelize everybody?
That's
Because
what I think. Yeah.
because here's the thing, right? And you're thinking like, oh man, like, when I was,
It's this big thing for me to do.
when I was wandering for the last 2 weeks, I wasn't doing my mission. I wasn't I wasn't going and like
Yeah, I think I'm missing
preaching
out on my
here and
mission.
preaching here and preaching here. But here's the thing is, and the Bible's chock full of verses about this, which we can get into if you want. But if you're not loving people, right? Like, all of your work is going to be burned in the final day, right?
Yeah.
And even if you have all the gifts, right, all the spiritual gifts, but you're not loving people, right, it's useless, right? It's a clanging gong. It's a, it's
So it's
got,
the foundation.
yeah,
Everything else on top of that has to be like powered by love, right?
right. And so, I like, we can't overemphasize that we've moved out of an economy of law and works and into this thing where we don't owe anybody anything but to love each other, right? And God's sole purpose through us is for us to love, right? So you know we have to receive that from God and then give that to other people. And you know and I almost even hesitate to say this because I don't want people to be like, okay, yeah, right, now we're back on the same page. But like, in a way, it's like, okay, once you've loved people, then you can kind of, say your piece about TikTok or whatever, right? But I don't
Yeah.
even really think it's about that. I think it's almost more so like it's not like, okay, so I'm supposed to love somebody so then I can do
So
the
then I can
stuff
do
that I
my
already have
mission.
been thinking
Yeah.
about. It's
Yeah.
like, no, no, no. Like, if you're loving people and you're only focused on that and you're just receiving the love that you have from God, the
And it's
forgiveness that you have with God,
overflowing.
it's just going to happen naturally,
Yeah.
right? So it's almost like, hey, stop thinking about that other stuff, you know?
You're right. That's what I was yearning for too. I'm like, God, none of this is real anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Like all of my works, all of these things, the hoodies, um, things that he's been blessing too. It's like, yeah, there is no, I could feel it. There is no reward for the way like I'm going about these things. Like these things have become idols.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm not gonna like, I think it was part of God's plan, and I don't have to figure like to figure it out myself,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is very like comforting. I'm like, wow, I don't get the credit for this new change of heart. Like that was all God and His sovereignty.
Yeah.
And I like what you were saying about how everything, like if you're not loving people, like what's the point? And the first commandment, I think, even in the Old Testament, that was still true because the first commandment was to love God with all
Mm.
your heart, soul, and mind.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get around that, you know, whether you um, feels a lot of guilt and shame for your sin. It's not time to walk away from God. You can't miss the most important thing you can do is
Yeah.
to love Him. All right, now I'm gonna ask you how's your week going, Steve?
Dang, dude. I
Uh,
mean, so
it's been so
my
long.
my whole thing, my struggle has been I want to get from God what I've been getting from false gods in my life, idols,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And this is sort of like a new way of defining things, some clarity that I feel like the Lord's given me recently. Like the classic example, I think, is from Jeremiah 2, which we've been studying recently, and where he says, my people have committed, I'm going to say this from memory, probably get it wrong, but It's basically my people have committed two sins. I'll just turn there. It's 2 Jeremiah 2 and verse 13. I'll be reading out of the New International Version. My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. So, you know, practically speaking, we have God who should be giving us joy, for example, joy, rest,
Yes.
right? The spring of living water of joy and rest in our lives as Christians, right? And instead, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, we're going to, the God of YouTube, right? And that's a broken cistern, right? It's not evil, but for me, I've just found myself, and not bashing YouTube, but just, it's easy for me to go onto a platform where you can just, whatever it is,
Yeah.
they all do it now, and just like I'm looking for rest, I'm looking for joy, right? And it's a broken cistern. When I think sometimes when you have conversations with Christians about this stuff, you'll be describing the situation and they'll basically be telling you, oh, you shouldn't be thirsty. You have Jesus Christ, right? And it's like, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says, yes, you're thirsty and your thirst is real and legit. And there's a way that you can drink water from this spring of living water, right? So my quest recently has been, okay, I have this feeling where typically under these circumstances I would go to this false god, right? This old way of satisfying a craving that I'm having. But I've just been shown through conviction that it leads down a bad path, right? And there's no real substance there, right? And you were talking about this where you're like watching the game and you're like, oh wait, let me read the Bible and go on a prayer walk, and you got filled and you were like, okay, right, And it's kind of like that, but again with this whole idea of like, when you get all the keys, God changes all the locks. It's not about like, oh, like whenever I feel that way at work, I should put on a worship song or something. It's like, it's not about like, because again, if righteousness was just the right law that you can do, then Christ died in vain, right? So it's not about like, oh, let me just clearly delineate a law and then I'll be okay. It's like a level above that. It's like turn to God, right?
Yeah. It's faith.
Yeah.
Faith that God could give you what you need in this situation, that He is applicable.
Yeah.
In
And it
this
might be
situation.
different every day, day to day.
It could be different.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that can sustain us in this life that has so many different. We have so many different struggles and trials, and even the same issue could be triggered by a different thing at a different time, in a different day, and yeah, He's got to be like, we got to have faith that He is in this moment. He's in this moment, the next one, and that He has a way out. He says there's a way out for every moment, so we can trust that, right? We have to like, just I struggle with that a lot, just trusting that, like, wow, God is going to, like, there is a way that He will move. I kind of just I don't know. I feel like I was better at it before, but that's not true. I think I had a very fundamental way of looking at life, just kind of like a balance scale. But yeah, He is. I don't even know.
Some of this stuff, it's like once you start really looking at it and like trying, and you were talking about this earlier, once you like really start looking at it and like trying to get better at it, it gets worse for a little while.
Yeah.
And there's times where like you find yourself like struggling with it more than you did like before you really looked at it. And I hear that often enough that I think that's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, yeah.
And not something to totally be like worried about. But it's funny because like, I've got all these different sins in my life, and the way that I feel like the Lord's been kind of showing me to deal with them over the last few years is to kind of like just try to travel back upstream and like see like where are they beginning, and where like what am I looking for in them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of times these sins that we talk about, they're really like, it's the fruit, it's not the root, right? It's like it's the end result of something that we were looking for a long time ago, or some sort of a misunderstanding of God, or like still an area of unbelief that we have in
Yeah.
God. Like
Yeah.
for me, it's like to be honest, it seems like there's a a lack of faith, a lack of belief that God will give me joy and rest,
Yeah.
right? And so I start to get a little squirrely. I start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm just going to go take it in
Yeah.
a way that I know I can get it, right? And it can be discouraging when you kind of come to yourself already kind of midway, and you're like, and that was honestly, that was sort of my day today. I kept sort of like finding myself like not working because I just had like a really stressful day the last week, and leading spilling into today, just like a lot of stuff going on at work. And I work at home on the computer in an office, you know what I mean? So it's kind of just like, man versus self, man versus world, and um, and I found myself a lot like I'd just be like, oh man, like how long have I been like just on the internet, or like how long have I just been watching, and I just like close it out, start working again. But I had like a number of those times today, and I was just like, man, like it's discouraging,
Yeah.
because I feel like part of me is like, oh, I know this. You know what I mean? Like I've been studying this, I've been teaching this. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I'm kind of dropping the ball today. And there's not really like, not that there ever really is, but there's not even like a good excuse necessarily. It's not like, oh, I'm tired, or like,
Yeah.
oh, I had a fight with my wife, or what I mean? It's like I'm just like there, and it's a
Yeah.
sort of like a regular, just harder than normal day slightly, you know and I just find myself, just goofing off,
Yeah.
and just because I'm uncomfortable with a couple of situations at work, so like it's so funny. It's like I'll get like one step, and then I'll take a break, because it's just so like, like I'm just procrastinating it so
Yeah.
much because it's painful in a number of ways. Like I'll do like a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, take a break, like,
Yeah.
I
If
don't
it's
know.
discouraging like that, like you're like, wow. Say it's more like a trespass. You're like, wow, I like really just said no to God, or like I keep doing it, depending on how much time, how long it's been
Yeah,
that you've been doing this, or like the case that the enemy has built up against you.
yeah,
It can feel like it is so easy to just be like, wow, like there is no grace for
yeah,
this. Like
yeah,
everything out the window.
yeah,
Like no way, not for me. Or like how is this like helpful for
right.
God to have grace? Like doesn't he have to like don't I need condemnation? And I was just saying this the other day to one of my brothers. I'm like, um, we don't need condemnation to overcome sin.
Hmm.
We don't need it from other people, and we don't need it from ourselves or from the enemy. We don't need it to overcome sin. What we need is forgiveness, because if we can forgive each other for anything,
Yeah,
then our relationship is unbreakable, and that's what we have with God.
yeah,
We have a God who, even if we were to kill one of his people, one of his sons, we did kill his son.
hmm.
He would be able to forgive us through that, and we would still have the same position. I can't say that for any of my brothers. I don't know if I would be able to forgive them through that.
Yeah,
But that is a cool thing to know that, well, if we can forgive each other for it, then it can't break our relationship. And that's like a really cool perspective to have on our relationship with God. How he can forgive us for everything. His grace is like so much. It's unlimited. It's not like ours
Yeah.
in a level we can't achieve.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to handle too. If somebody were to, you know, there are things that people could do to us where we would have to change the position of our relationship with them
Yeah.
because we couldn't handle it. You know, we're not invincible, we're not all knowing, and we're not sovereign over everything that happens in this life. But
Right.
God is.
Right.
But it's like, do I trust Him though?
Yeah.
That no matter what I do, that His grace is really like that, like what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
I'm learning this, and I'm starting to believe this is the meat that Paul is talking about.
Yes.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
The law is easy. It's so black and white. It's like,
Yep.
this is bad, this is good.
Yeah.
You can learn that in a week.
Yeah.
But this relationship, that just, man, it's like, am I ever going to get this? Am I ever going to get
Right.
the Father's love for me?
Right.
I get little glimpses of it when
Right.
I'm out in those places. I don't know.
What's been tough for me, what I feel like, we talk about sometimes like the layers of the onion, that the Lord's peeling back, and one of the things that I feel like, okay, like I get the grace that, everything's been forgiven on like God took, Jesus took the wrath of God, meant for us. So, okay, when we put our faith in Him, we have His love, and, okay, you know what I mean? But like one of the things I still get stuck on, like if I've just, sinned, or if I've just been, maybe in a more benign way, just like not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like I get this fear in my mind that the Lord, okay, yes, I'm forgiven with Him, I'm everything's taken care of, but it's sort of that thing like, oh, I haven't been practicing, so I'm going to just mess up in the game tonight, kind of thing,
Yeah.
like He's going to, that's like His discipline, is that he's going to allow me to, like, he, like with Samson, or some of the other Old Testament fellas, like He's going to remove His spirit from me, His not His Holy Spirit that I'm saved, but like his anointing of like His
Yeah.
power on my life to fulfill my ministry.
Yeah.
So I got this thought that like, oh, He's going to remove His power of my ministry now that I've been, being a loser today, and like, I'm telling you, it's like, God has been showing me that that's not true, right? Experientially, like through me seeing, almost in like hindsight, like God using me mightily after I've been, being a loser, and it just goes to, more to your point of this, like, man, like this is hard to have faith in and to believe, because it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that, if I go and sin in a grave way, and then like the next day I have to, I'm suddenly dragged into an evangelism opportunity, or I have to go and teach Sunday school. It seems like God's power is not going to be behind that,
Yeah.
but it is, and like that's wrapped up in this somehow. Like somehow, like the way for us, it's almost more important for us to get that. Don't get mad at me. It's almost more important for us to get that than for us to stop this sin that we're so concerned about, right? Like it's more important for us to understand that God's power is still in our lives, like despite our failures and our inadequacies, right? And our choosing to sin in different situations, like His power is still on our life for us to fulfill our ministries.
Yeah. It does make sense when you're looking at it from this perspective, when you're not in the thick of it.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes sense. Why
Yeah.
would He not reach these people through you,
Yeah.
regardless of what you did, if He forgives you?
Yeah.
anyways. It's like, of course, it's not about you. It's not about your position anymore. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, it's like, man, there's got to be some punishment for this.
Right.
Like, and I don't know. I've been getting like, so like my shoulder, I was messing around, just being dumb at work, and then I was doing push-ups. You know, they started doing push-ups. I started doing push-ups,
Yeah.
and I noticed, ow, my shoulder or whatever. Now, fast forward a month, there's been like little things, and like I was playing basketball the night before, and now I feel like this like clicking or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like this has turned into a lifelong injury. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe I just like ruined my body
Yeah.
or whatever. And now it's been like today on and off, there's been a lot of fear about it. A lot of like, I'm sure this is an issue forever. Like, I can't believe this is still happening. And then this guy at work was talking to me. He's like, bro, you are fine. Like, I have 2 shoulders. And it's like, all right. I'm like, I'm good. No, I'm not really that good. I'm good.
Yeah.
No, I'm like I get these glimpses. Even without anyone talking to me, I'll be like, wow, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, this will heal,
Yeah.
you know, and like, I'll be fine. And it's just like, it's so funny how I was just going in and out of not believing, or not even not believing, but this fear.
Yeah.
And then realizing like, oh, okay, like with all like the little connecting the dots, like I'm probably okay, even though I'm unsure. You know, like there's a bunch of different things it could be. It could be something is a little misplaced. It could be a small tear. It could just be a strain. It could. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would get these random. I would be at peace sometimes, and then I wouldn't be at peace other times.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know. It's interesting because I'm trying to just be like, this doesn't matter at all. You know,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, it did lead me to really just like, there are a lot of things that just make you look forward to heaven in
Yeah.
your heavenly body.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this isn't going to matter. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But also not trusting it. Like, God has reasons for things. And like, why would I even have this kind of idea in my heart that like I really ruined something that wasn't supposed to happen?
Yeah. Right.
Should I ever think like that? I shouldn't. But it's hard.
I mean, it's funny because it's like, I mean, you might have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might have really hurt your shoulder. But
But did I mess? But was that not part of the plan? Now?
I mean, even
Did
if
God, like, mess up and let me do something?
Well, listen. Even if it wasn't part of the plan, what do you
Okay.
do with that information, right? Because what I hear
trust
people,
God.
do sometimes is they'll like let's say you have like a really this is like a classic. I'm kind of making fun of somebody right now, so hopefully they listen to this. But let's say you have like a super awkward interaction during like the reception, like the dancing portion of a wedding, right? Like super awkward. And your reaction to that is, I'm never gonna stay. I'm never gonna stay to like the past the dinner portion of a wedding. Never gonna do that again. I'm just not going to. I'm not gonna put myself in that situation.
No, that's not
Right.
right. No.
And I'm telling you, it's like you're looking at something that may or may not have been a sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your reaction to it is, here's a law that I can keep that will keep me righteous in this area for the rest of my life, right? And some of the sins that we commit have consequences, right? I'm not
Yes, yes.
saying that you're doing push-ups with a sin, but maybe, right? Like maybe part of what's going through your head is like, oh man, like
I was being reckless.
I shouldn't have, yeah, and and it's like, oh, like I can never be, and part of this like whole,
Yeah, I'm
it's
like,
like a survival
yeah.
mechanism. That's why we keep thinking about it, because we're like, I have to make sure I never do that again,
Yes,
right? And
yeah.
it's like, dude, the real way that we're gonna respond to this properly is by just being like, that was wrong, that was okay, that part of it was wrong, that part of it was okay. Here's what happened. God's in control. I'm going to continue to try to live this Christian life that we're talking about, which is like meat and tough to work through, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to, continue to live in the freedom of God and trust that he's going to use me and try to be, seek him for revelation in my life for things that I should have a conviction about. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Not
Yeah.
just like this sort of boogeyman of like, I can never be reckless. It's so vague,
Yeah.
and,
And these things, like, my mission is exciting to me.
yeah,
It is. So those are things that I'm like excited to keep doing.
yeah,
Once I have all this together in my head, of course I would love to keep doing it, like to move forward in that. I don't have to worry about I don't think I need condemnation to keep me on the right track.
right,
I don't think we need it at all.
yeah,
But it is like the first thing that we think is going to keep us safe.
right,
If I need to make sure that I'm not reckless anymore. Because it makes sense,
yeah,
though. Like if I protect my shoulders
yeah,
and I don't mess around anymore, I'll be okay. But I think I mean, it's hard to think like this, but I think God does have the power to give you, like, even though it makes no sense, you've already hurt yourself once,
yeah,
how could he protect your shoulders moving forward?
yeah,
How could he protect them
Yeah.
and I'm still being dumb?
Yeah.
Or yeah, how could he protect
would
them
he
when
do
I'm not
that?
paying attention?
right, right,
That's the thing. I need the control over my sins, over my addictions. I need to say, all right, if I'm this much mad about, or like, I don't know, I need to take control. That's
Yeah.
how I feel.
yeah,
But that's not trusting God.
right,
But here's the thing about this whole grace thing.
yeah,
You won't, I mean, God gets the glory eventually, but like you won't understand what's going on and you won't be able to trust him if you're not abiding in him,
yeah,
And yeah, you will just like beat yourself up. Like we can't force our brains to have faith when we're not connected to him. And that faith is our righteousness, our salvation, our everything. So
yeah,
I think adding to that grace message that God is sovereign even through your absence
yeah,
and your failures.
yeah,
One thing that we need to keep in mind is that if we aren't reflecting and in prayer and like seeking God, like that's our motivation right there. We will be kind of clueless,
yeah,
and we'll save ourselves a lot of trouble. What's that song? Oh, what needless pain we bear because we don't bring it to God in
right,
prayer.
right,
I love
right.
that song.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
a good song.
Yeah,
Good lyrics.
yeah. No, that's true.
So that's like a little call to action because like this, I call it ultimate grace. This ultimate grace idea.
Yeah,
It seems like, all right, you take your hands off the wheel now and you're good.
Yeah.
Just have faith. And that's kind of how I take it sometimes. And I've been noticing it lead me to not be reverent, not really respect God, and just kind of like over time it just chinks away.
yeah,
I'm like, well, I'm just gonna keep, just staying disconnected. It really does. There are still, like we do need that time, but what do? I don't know.
I think of it like the parable of the talents, where people were given these huge amounts of money, and they were basically told to go buy and sell and make gain and like
Yeah.
make a profit. And the only guy that, and and maybe I'm misunderstanding this parable, because there's not a guy in the parable who lost money. So maybe that's actually just evidence of God's grace, that none of us are going to lose money, right? But I should tell my explanation of it first.
Yeah.
So I think that we should think of this ultimate grace as the freedom to fail in grand endeavors in our lives. You know what I mean? Even if like grand is like, now I'm not saying grand as in like numbers or like an obviously worldly way of thinking grand. I'm thinking
Yeah,
grand.
that's how I think of
Thinking grand as
big.
like I'm gonna be the best father to my children.
Oh, okay.
I'm
So
really
something real. You're
I'm
saying.
gonna earn that number one dad. You know what I mean? Kind of. You know what I mean?
Wait, I'm
Like
confused.
I'm just saying like because sometimes like if you say like I'm gonna do something grand for the Lord, I feel like people think like, oh, you're gonna convert
Yeah, yeah.
Japan.
Big
You know what I mean?
following and
Yeah,
yes.
and it's like, well, you know, maybe grand in the sense of quality, right?
Okay.
Where like I'm going to love you.
So like you have a real. It's like real what you're shooting
Yes,
for. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but grandly. You know what I mean? And in the sense that like pick something that's a big enough goal that it's almost like probable that you'll fail. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you're not shooting high enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
And I feel like that's what we're supposed to do with our grace, with the ultimate grace, is like I'm gonna go out there. You know what I mean? It's not ultimate grace to sit on the couch.
No.
It's ultimate grace to go live the Christian life in a body of believers, right? In your local church, try to love them well, right? Engage in relationships that are difficult, right? Engage with difficult people, have difficult conversations, and give yourself the freedom to fail, right?
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean. Like if you're like we talk about this sometimes, where it's like, oh, like I feel like the Lord's given me this idea of something to research in the Bible. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes it's tricky because it's like you don't want to go down this like cult route where it's like I have a new revelation, you know. But like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Lord's given you this idea and he wants you to research it, you know, and maybe you're supposed to like bring it to the church, again, your mission is almost less about the thing. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to just go up there with a microphone, you know, or a megaphone and just be like, "Hey, losers, you've been missing the point the whole time." You know what I mean? It's supposed to be like, "Okay, let me research this so that when I'm loving my brother, just naturally this kind of comes up because I've been
Yeah.
saturating it, right?" And
So it's not about taking the bold, because that's a big thing right now. Like, if you do something that is more outside of your comfort zone, then it is more like
right,
you are
it's more holy,
really, yeah, you're like really stepping into the things that
right,
God wants you to step into.
right,
But then yes, that overtakes. It's like, wow, I'm going to scream this in the mall, you
right,
know. And it's like, all right, with all of that adrenaline going, I don't know. It like are we, it is a good question. Like, is this fueled by love? Like, are you really in this moment still thinking like these people need Jesus, or is it like, all right, God, I'm doing it. Like,
right,
I like, and we got it on camera.
right. It's good
I
because
don't
it's
mind
hard.
filming, but I don't mind that. But it's hard, man. Doing these
Yeah,
grand things, like you're saying, man, it's like you can really miss it. And I've experienced it, so
yeah.
I get it.
It's not good because it's hard.
Yes,
That's
that's
the
what I
thing.
think. I think it's better because I do the harder thing,
Yeah, it's like
which is that's in life. The
yeah,
harder things to achieve are the most, but that's in this world.
yeah,
That is a parable of like this world, I guess, but not in the kingdom of heaven. I don't
yeah.
think. I think you're onto something there.
There are a lot of good things are hard,
Yes.
but it's not good because it's hard, right?
Okay.
And it's
Right.
not
Yeah.
more good the harder it is, right?
Yeah.
I always give the example of like if you're a gifted pianist, God, it's not more holy for you to go be a missionary to the deaf, right? Like God's not like trying, you know what I mean? Like it's not like, oh, I'm going to deny I'm gonna deny
I love the piano.
this worldly
Let me
thing.
deny
I'm gonna
this.
go serve God. You know what I mean? In a way that's completely against this. It's like, dude, like you're probably like going too far. Like there's probably wrapped up in here some like self-hate because you're still struggling with sin like we all are, and you're thinking like, I'm just going to completely deny myself. That's how I'll overcome
Yeah.
sin, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, probably not. Like you're probably supposed to be the piano player at your church, and you know, I don't know, like maybe have like a ministry with
Yeah.
some kids who want to learn the piano and stuff. Like I don't
It's a
know, like
struggle,
you know what I
man.
mean, like. But when I'm talking about this parable of the talents and stuff, it's like, you know, we have this ultimate grace. It's not just to sit on the couch. It's like, you know, we've been given this mass sum of money, and it's kind of like it's almost like you're a venture capitalist or something. It's like, hey, like you have this fund, you know, and your whole objective is just, you know, go make some trades and go invest
Yeah. Yeah.
and be involved in it, right? Like it's not just like you're not supposed to just sit when you get saved and we have this ultimate grace. You're not just supposed to sit with it in your bank account. You can and you do,
Reading your Bible all
right?
day.
Like you will go to heaven, right? Like with that, you will. But it's like the call for us, the call of adventure or the call of our lives, right? Our real ministry is to, you know, think of a lofty, you know, a good goal, right? And make steps for it, you know, and this can
Yeah.
take this can take the form of like, you know, like where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years kind of thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It doesn't like don't make it so vague that it's like, oh, I want to change the world or oh, I want to
Yeah.
impact the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I had this thing a while back where I was kind of struggling with my career and different things, and I kind of laid it before the Lord one night after talking to people for like a year. Kind of realized like, oh, I should lay this before the Lord, you know. And so I kind of went and I was just like, you know, what do you want me to do? And in my career, because there was some different financial concerns, and I was like, should I leave my company? Should I go back to school? I had kind of these different questions that I wanted him to give me some direction on, and I felt like he flipped the tables on me. I'm not saying this is going to happen to everybody, because God does give us answers with financial and career stuff, but he flipped the tables on me in this particular situation, and kind of I felt like he was very clearly asking me like, where do I see myself in 5 years in the church, right? And you know, which is funny because it's like I'm getting a little older, you know, like I started coming to this church straight out of college. And so I just found myself in the college young adults. And then I kind of like slowly was sort of put into this leadership position where like once I sort of technically aged out of the college young adults, I stuck around as a leader, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool, praise God, you know. But at the same time, you know, for me, I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, not that I'm trying to leave, but like I've always had in the back of my mind like where do I go? Like am I is this just where I am? You know what I mean? Or like do I ever graduate to be an adult, you know? And like what does that look like? And like when do I become like the kind of like guys, you know, that I respect in the church, like these pillars that I think of, like how does that transition happen? Do I just wake up one day and I'm that guy, or like, you know, is there a path there? So I feel like the Lord was kind of giving me um that job of like thinking about that, like where do I see myself in the church? Where do I see myself in my ministry? And you know, I felt like me personally that involved, you know, really leaning into some of the ministries that I was already involved in.